The rain came down in relentless sheets, transforming the city streets into shimmering, distorted reflections of neon signs and flickering traffic lights. Water pooled in the cracked pavement, swirling around discarded cigarette butts and crumpled newspapers, before being swallowed by overflowing storm drains. Under the dim, flickering glow of a street lamp outside Joe's 24-hour diner, a man sat motionless beneath a tattered awning. Sam Grayson barely acknowledged the cold drizzle seeping through the holes in his worn-out military jacket. His weathered hands, scarred from years of unseen battles, wrapped around a paper cup of coffee long since gone cold. The night manager had given it to him out of pity, or perhaps unease. There was something about Sam, something in the way he carried himself. Even hunched over on a rain-soaked curb, there was an unmistakable discipline in his posture, an alertness in his gaze. To the average passerby, he was just another drifter and aging, forgotten veteran lost in the shuffle of a city that no longer had use for men like him. But appearances could be deceiving. Across the street, a police cruiser slowed to a stop, its red and blue lights flickering faintly but remaining off. 4 uniformed officers stepped out, boots splashing into the shallow puddles. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and the kind of arrogance that comes from unchecked authority, surveyed the street before his eyes locked onto Sam. Well, Sergeant Travis Boone drawled, swaggering forward. "Look what we've got here, boys." Sam remained still, his gaze unfocused, seemingly lost in thought. His lack of response irritated Boone, who rested a hand on the baton at his belt. "You deaf, old man, or just plain stupid?" Sam finally looked up, his deep-set eyes meeting Boone's with unsettling calm. His voice, though quiet, carried a sharp clarity. "Neither, sir." Boone's smirk faltered for the briefest moment. Something in those eyes too steady, too calculating sent a chill up his spine. But with an audience of fellow officers watching, he doubled down. "What's in the bag?" Boone kicked the worn duffel at Sam's feet, sending it skidding across the wet concrete. Clothes tumbled out, along with a battered book, a toothbrush, and a small metal box that clattered loudly. Boone crouched, flipping open the lid. Inside, a set of dog tags and a faded photograph rested atop a folded military commendation. "Military, huh?" Boone sneered, tossing the dog tags into a puddle. "And now you're just another bum who couldn't hack it in civilian life." For the briefest moment, something flickered in Sam's eyes. A cold, mechanical calculation. A predator assessing its prey. "You should put those back," he said, his voice even, almost indifferent. Boone's laughter was sharp, mean. "Or what, old man? You gonna fight the whole damn department?" The mistake had already been made, but Boone didn't know it yet. The tension in the rain-soaked alley was almost tangible, thick enough to choke on. Sergeant Travis Boone smirked as he dangled Sam Grayson's dog tags between his fingers, letting them clink together like a gambler toying with loose change. The other officers chuckled, emboldened by their leader's arrogance. Sam remained motionless, his expression unreadable. His weathered face betrayed no anger, no fear, just an eerie stillness, like the moment before a predator strikes. Boone took a step closer, emboldened by Sam's apparent lack of reaction. He jabbed a finger into the older man's chest. "Here's how this works, old man. You and your kind? You don't belong here. You stink up the streets, scare off decent folks. So we do our part, make sure you move along." One of the younger officers, Reynolds, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking between Boone and Sam. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right with him. But the others? They were enjoying themselves. Boone's smirk widened. "Now, I asked you a question, Gramps. What are you gonna do about it?" Sam let out a slow breath, nostrils flaring. The muscle memory was there. Every nerve, every tendon in his body knew how to dismantle a man before he even had time to blink. Boone had already made 3 tactical mistakes. 1, he assumed his size and numbers gave him the upper hand. 2, he let Sam get a full read on his stance, his movements. And 3, he touched him. Sam struck before the next raindrop hit the pavement. His left hand shot up, grabbing Boone's wrist in an iron grip. Before the sergeant could react, Sam twisted, pivoting on his heel, and in one seamless motion, Boone's own arm was wrenched behind his back, forcing him onto his knees. His baton clattered to the pavement. The laughter died instantly. "Step back, Sam's voice was low, controlled, but filled with unmistakable authority. The officers hesitated. Even Boone, for all his bravado, had felt it that terrifying efficiency. This wasn't some washed-up veteran. This was something else. Boone's face twisted in rage. "Take him down," he roared. They rushed in. The first officer lunged, aiming to grab Sam's shoulder, but Sam sidestepped effortlessly, using Boone as a shield. The second officer swung wildly, and Sam ducked under the punch, redirecting the momentum to send the man stumbling into his partner. A boot connected with Sam's ribs, a lucky shot. Pain flared, but it didn't slow him. He turned into it, using the momentum to drive an elbow into the attacker's throat. The officer crumpled, gasping for air. Another baton swung toward his head. Sam caught it mid-air, wrenching it from the officer's grip, then drove the handle into the man's stomach. Boone scrambled back, face red with fury and humiliation. He drew his gun. "Freeze!" he bellowed, chest heaving. Sam stopped. Not out of fear, but calculation. Rainwater dripped from his hair as he stared Boone down. His breathing was steady, controlled. "You don't want to do that," Sam said quietly. Boone's finger tightened on the trigger. His ego was bruised, his authority challenged. He needed to reassert control. "You just assaulted 4 cops." Boone spat, chest heaving. "I got every reason to drop you right now." Sam didn't blink. "And if you do, you'll be on every headline by sunrise." Boone faltered for half a second. Reynolds swallowed hard, stepping forward. "Sarge, we need to." "Shut up, rookie," Boone barked, never taking his eyes off Sam. Sam exhaled slowly. Boone was unraveling. The smart play would be to de-escalate, but Boone wasn't the type to think 2 steps ahead. He was a bully used to getting his way. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called it in. Boone's jaw clenched. He had 2 choices: walk away or make this worse. His pride made the decision for him. He lunged forward, swinging the gun up. Sam moved first. A sharp twist, a perfectly timed sidestep, and Boone's own momentum carried him into the wall. His gun was gone. Sam had disarmed him in a single, fluid motion. The headlights of a squad car swept across the alley as reinforcements arrived. Boone turned, wild-eyed. Sam simply held out the gun, handle first. "Take it." Boone hesitated. His career, his reputation, it was all flashing before his eyes. And then, "Get on the ground. Hands behind your head." A new voice cut through the rain. Officers poured into the alley, weapons drawn. Sam didn't resist. He lowered himself to his knees, fingers laced behind his head. He could have fought his way out. He could have disappeared into the city, leaving nothing but questions. But that wasn't the plan, not yet. Because this wasn't just about him. As they shoved him into the back of the patrol car, Sam caught a glimpse of Reynolds standing frozen, staring after him with an expression caught between fear and realization. Sam gave him a single, knowing look. The first seed of doubt had been planted. And for Boone, the worst was yet to come. The precinct was alive with late-night activity. Phones rang, reports clattered onto desks, and the ever-present hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above. The air smelled of stale coffee and rain-soaked uniforms. Inside a dimly lit interrogation room, Sam Grayson sat shackled to the metal table, his expression unreadable. His bruised face remained impassive as he listened to the commotion outside. He had been in worse situations, far worse. Across from him, Sergeant Boone nursed his wounded pride, standing with his arms crossed, glaring down at Sam, with barely concealed rage. He had spent the last hour filing the kind of paperwork that made officers look bad. Now, all he wanted was a reason to make this man pay. "You're in a world of trouble, old man," Boone sneered, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Assaulting an officer? Resisting arrest? You'll be lucky to see daylight again." Sam didn't respond. Boone chuckled, shaking his head. "See, I did some digging while you were getting processed. You're a ghost, Grayson. No family, no address, nothing but a name on some outdated military records. That tells me one of 2 things: you're either a washed-up relic, or you're someone who should have stayed buried." Still, Sam remained silent. The door creaked open. Officer Reynolds stepped inside, looking hesitant. He cleared his throat. Sarge, we got a problem." Boone scowled. Unless that problem is this guy suddenly confessing, I don't care. Reynolds hesitated. It's the system. We ran as prints. Boone waved dismissively. Yeah, I already know old military. Probably a dishonorable discharge. Nothing we can't bury. Reynolds swallowed. No, Sarge. It flagged him. Boone's smirk faltered. Flagged him? Reynolds nodded, his face pale. The system kicked it back, classified clearance level 5. The Department of Defense wants immediate contact. Silence. Boone's jaw tightened. That's gotta be a mistake. Reynolds shook his head. It's not. And, the phone rang about 5 minutes after we got the match. Someone from the DOD. They said. The desk phone in the corner rang, cutting him off. All three men turned to look at it. Boone hesitated, then picked up the receiver. Sergeant Boone, Maplewood PD. A crisp, authoritative voice responded. Sergeant, this is Colonel Richard Monroe, United States Special Operations Command. You currently have a man in your custody, Sam Grayson. Boone glanced at Sam, then back at Reynolds. Yeah, we got him. What's it to you? You are to release him immediately, Monroe said, his tone sharp and unquestioning. No charges. No record. This conversation never happened. Do you understand me, Sergeant? Boone's fingers tightened around the receiver. Hold on a second. This guy assaulted my officers. This is not a request, Monroe interrupted. You will release him. Now. Boone's nostrils flared. He was being backed into a corner, and he didn't like it. Or what? A brief pause. Then Monroe spoke, his voice deadly calm. Or I make one phone call, and by morning, your entire department will be under federal review. Your files, your finances, your private dealings, everything. How do you think that will go for you, Sergeant Boone? A cold sweat broke out on Boone's forehead. Fine, he spat. But if this guy so much as jaywalks, the line went dead. Boone slammed the phone down, his face red with fury. He turned to Sam, who simply stared at him, unreadable as ever. Get him out of my sight, Boone growled. Reynolds hesitated. Sarge, now, Boone barked. Reluctantly, Reynolds stepped forward, unlocking the cuffs and gesturing for Sam to stand. Sam rose smoothly, rubbing his wrists as if this were all a minor inconvenience. He paused at the doorway, turning back to Boone. You should have left me alone. Boone's fists clenched, but he said nothing. Outside the precinct, the rain had slowed to a fine drizzle. Reynolds walked Sam to the curb, uneasy. You mind telling me what the hell that was about? Reynolds asked. Sam adjusted his coat. Nope. Reynolds exhaled sharply. Jesus, man. You got a colonel calling to bail you out? Who are you? Sam studied him for a moment, then against better judgment decided to throw him a bone. A long time ago, I was someone like you. Reynolds frowned. Like me? A cop. Thought the job meant something. Thought I could change things. But I learned the truth. Reynolds tilted his head. And what truth is that? Sam sighed, stepping closer. This whole town is rotting from the inside out. The cops, the politicians, the moneymen, they all work together, covering for each other. Boone? He's just the small fish. The real sharks, the ones pulling the strings. You don't even know their names. Reynolds swallowed. And you do? Sam gave him a knowing look. I know one of them. And I promise you, he's watching all of this. A gust of wind carried the scent of rain-soaked asphalt as Sam turned and walked away. Reynolds stood there, his stomach twisting. Somewhere in the city, a sleek black car idled outside a high-rise. Inside, a man in an expensive suit watched the precinct doors through tinted windows. He smirked as he swirled his whiskey. Well, the man murmured. I should have known you weren't really gone, Grayson. He lifted his phone, dialing a number. Tell our friends we have a situation, he said smoothly. The ghost is back. Officer Jake Reynolds sat in his modest apartment, staring at the laptop screen in front of him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Hesitant, unsure of what line he was about to cross. The precinct's secure database was pulled up, but it was what he had found in the classified archives that sent a cold shiver down his spine. Sam Grayson wasn't just another vagrant, or a washed-up vet. The files, what little wasn't redacted, painted a picture of a man who had operated in the shadows, a specialist whose skill set didn't belong to ordinary soldiers. His mission spanned continents, His confirmed kills were in the triple digits, and then, nothing. A sudden disappearance. Like he had been erased. Reynolds exhaled, rubbing his temples. What the hell am I looking at? A knock at the door made him jump. He quickly closed the laptop, grabbing his service weapon from the coffee table as he approached. Relax, came a calm voice from the other side. Reynolds hesitated, then cracked the door open. Sam Grayson stood there, the dim hallway light casting deep shadows across his weathered face. How the hell did you find me? Reynolds demanded. Sam smirked. You're a cop. You use the same passwords for your work account and personal email. That was my first clue. Reynolds scowled, stepping aside reluctantly. You hacked my account? I prefer investigated. Sam stepped inside, his eyes scanning the apartment like he was cataloging every possible exit, every object that could be used as a weapon. Old habits. You've been digging, Sam said, nodding toward the laptop. Reynolds crossed his arms. And what if I have? Sam took a seat, completely at ease. Then you already know you're in over your head. Reynolds scoffed. What I know is that you're not some random homeless guy who got roughed up by Boone. You're somebody dangerous. And for some reason, the Department of Defense wants to pretend you don't exist. Sam leaned forward. The real question, Reynolds, is why you're looking into me. You could have just let it go. A cop like you, you're not on Boone's payroll. You still believe in the badge. So why risk getting involved? Reynolds hesitated. Because something doesn't add up. Boone's dirty, I've known that for a while, but when the DODCALLED to cut you loose. That's when I knew this was bigger than just corrupt cops. Sam nodded. Bigger is an understatement. Reynolds took a breath. Then explain it to me. No games, no cryptic warnings. Just the truth. Sam studied him for a long moment, then finally spoke. There's a man named Victor Langston, he said. On the surface, he's a businessman, owns real estate, construction firms, shipping companies. But underneath? He runs the kind of business that doesn't make the news. Arms trafficking, political bribery, human lives, sold to the highest bidder. Reynolds frowned. Human trafficking? Sam's jaw tightened. Langston doesn't move drugs or guns anymore. He found something more profitable, more protected. He's got judges, mayors, and entire police departments on his payroll, including Boone. Reynolds felt a sick twist in his stomach. So Boone isn't just some thug with a badge. He's helping Langston move people? Sam nodded. And they make sure nobody asks the wrong questions. Reynolds sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. Jesus. Sam leaned in. You see it now, don't you? This whole town is part of the machine. Boone is small time, but Langston? He owns this city. Reynolds looked at him warily. And where do you fit in? Sam exhaled slowly. Years ago, Langston was just another name on a list. He was running weapons to war zones, selling to terrorists. My job was to shut down operations like his. But Langston wasn't just another arms dealer, he was protected. Someone high up decided he was useful. So they cut me loose. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. And now you're back for revenge? Sam's expression didn't change. I'm back because no one else is going to stop him. Reynolds stared at him, trying to measure the man in front of him. Everything inside him told him to walk away, to pretend he hadn't seen the files, to ignore what he now knew. But the badge on his belt suddenly felt heavier. He thought of the missing persons reports, the unsolved cases that always seemed to disappear from the records, the victims with no voices, the stories that never made the news. Then he thought of Sarah, of Emma. What do you need from me? Reynolds finally asked. A flicker of something approval maybe crossed Sam's face. For now? Information, Sam said. We need to find where Langston is moving his shipments. Boone is the key. He knows everything, even if he doesn't realize it yet. Reynolds exhaled sharply. You know, if we go after Boone, Langston will come down on us hard, right? Sam smirked. Let him. I'm counting on it. Reynolds ran a hand through his hair, his pulse hammering. This was insane. Going after a powerful crime lord? A network of corrupt officials? But as he looked at Sam Grayson, the calm, steady way he carried himself, he realized something. This wasn't just a fight for revenge. It was something bigger. And for the first time, Reynolds knew exactly what side he needed to be on. All right, he said. Let's do this. Sam nodded. Welcome to the war. The night air was thick with tension, the kind that made seasoned men check their weapons twice. Sam Grayson stood at the edge of the rooftop, his eyes scanning the darkened city streets below. The safe house was compromised. They had no choice but to run. Officer Jake Reynolds stood beside him, gripping his pistol with white-knuckled tension. His mind was still catching up to the reality of the situation. An hour ago, he had been a cop investigating corruption. Now, he was a fugitive with a target on his back. "They'll be coming soon," Sam muttered. "Langston doesn't like loose ends." Reynolds exhaled sharply. "How many men are we talking?" Sam glanced at him. "Enough." A beat of silence. Then, in the distance, headlights. Two black SUVs roared around the corner, tires screeching as they came to a stop in front of the warehouse below. A half-dozen men spilled out, weapons drawn, moving with military precision. These weren't ordinary thugs. Langston had brought professionals. Reynolds cursed under his breath. "They're sweeping the block." Sam's jaw tightened. "They'll find us soon." He turned, moving quickly toward the rooftop's fire escape. "We need to get out of here. Fast." Reynolds followed, his heart pounding as they descended the metal stairs. The rusted steel creaked under their weight, and for a brief moment, he was sure the noise would give them away. As they reached the alley below, Sam held up a hand. "Stay close. Keep quiet." They slipped through the shadows, weaving between dumpsters and abandoned cars. In the distance, the mercenaries' voices echoed through the streets. "Move in pairs. Check every door." Reynolds gritted his teeth. They were running out of time. Sam led them through a side passage, toward a back exit that opened onto an old railway yard. Just as they reached the fence, the sound of boots pounding against pavement grew louder. Then, "Hey! Over here!" Gunfire erupted. Bullets slammed into the brick wall behind them as Reynolds dove for cover, his pulse hammering. Sam moved like a phantom, drawing his silenced pistol and firing two precise shots. Two men went down instantly. "Move!" Sam barked. Reynolds didn't hesitate. They sprinted toward a parked maintenance truck, using it as temporary cover. More gunfire ripped through the night, the mercenaries advancing like a pack of wolves. Reynolds peeked out and returned fire. But these weren't street criminals. They moved tactically, using angles and suppressive fire to push them toward a dead end. "We're boxed in," Reynolds gritted out. Sam reloaded, his mind calculating the odds. They weren't good. Then we changed the game. Without warning, he grabbed a discarded propane tank from the ground and hurled it toward the advancing mercenaries. As soon as it landed, he fired a single shot. The explosion was deafening. A fireball erupted, sending shockwaves through the alley. The force knocked two men off their feet and bought them a few precious seconds. "Go! Now!" They sprinted toward a break in the fence, vaulting over just as more gunfire erupted behind them. Reynolds hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Sam was already on his feet, yanking him up by the collar. A black sedan was parked a few yards away. Their escape plan. Reynolds fumbled for the keys, but Sam was faster. He slid into the driver's seat, hot-wiring the car in seconds. "Taught you that in the military?" Reynolds asked breathlessly as he jumped into the passenger seat. Sam smirked. "Taught myself." The tires screeched as they tore out of the alley, speeding down the empty streets. Behind them, the surviving mercenaries were scrambling to regroup. Reynolds exhaled sharply. That was close. Sam kept his eyes on the road. Not over yet. As if on cue, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. The SUVs were in pursuit. "Buckle up," Sam muttered. Reynolds barely had time to react before Sam jerked the wheel, sending the car into a tight turn down a narrow street. The SUVs followed, their engines roaring. "They're gaining," Reynolds warned. Sam didn't respond. Instead, he accelerated, weaving through the industrial district like he'd driven these roads 100 times. Then he spotted it. A construction zone ahead, filled with concrete barriers and equipment. "Hold on." Sam cut the wheel sharply, sending the sedan into a hard right turn. The car fishtailed through the gap between two barriers, barely squeezing through. The first SUV tried to follow too fast. It clipped the edge of a barrier, flipping onto its side before slamming into a parked bulldozer. The second SUV skidded to a stop behind it, forced to reroute. Sam smirked. That should slow them down. Reynolds let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. As they sped toward the city outskirts, the adrenaline still surging in his veins. He glanced at Sam. "We can't keep running," Reynolds said. "Langston won't stop." Sam nodded. "You're right." His grip tightened on the wheel. "Which means it's time we stop running and start hunting." Reynolds frowned. "What are you saying?" Sam's gaze was steel. "I'm saying it's time to take this fight to Langston." The night was thick with tension, the kind that twisted in the gut like a blade. Rain drizzled from the sky, slicking the pavement as Sam Grayson stood on a rooftop overlooking the abandoned industrial complex. Below, Langston's private security patrolled the perimeter, their weapons at the ready. They weren't taking any chances tonight. This was Langston's last stronghold. His empire had crumbled, his operations dismantled, his allies either dead or in hiding. But a cornered animal was always the most dangerous. Sam knew this all too well. Beside him, Jake Reynolds crouched low, scanning the area through a pair of binoculars. "This place is a fortress," he muttered. "Guards on every entrance, snipers on the rooftops, and I'm guessing reinforcements inside." Sam smirked. "Good. Makes things easier." Reynolds shot him a look. "Easier?" Sam pulled a small detonator from his pocket. "They're expecting a direct assault. We give them something else." With a click, an explosion ripped through the far end of the complex. A fireball erupted into the sky, sending shockwaves through the compound. The guards immediately turned, weapons raised, shouting orders. Sam and Reynolds moved. Silent as shadows, they descended the fire escape, slipping through the chaos. Sam dispatched the first guard with brutal efficiency, his knife slicing through the man's throat before he could make a sound. Reynolds followed suit, putting a silenced round through another guard's skull. The compound was vast, filled with warehouses, storage containers, and old machinery. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, avoiding open spaces. As they reached the loading docks, Sam signaled for Reynolds to stop. 2 guards stood watch at the entrance to the main warehouse, rifles at the ready. Sam took out a small glass sphere military-grade tear gas. He rolled it toward them. A hiss filled the air as the gas spread. The guards barely had time to react before their eyes burned, their lungs seized. They stumbled, coughing violently. Sam struck first, snapping the neck of the nearest guard. Reynolds dropped the other with 2 clean shots. They pushed inside. The warehouse was dimly lit, rows of crates and steel containers creating a labyrinth of cover. Footsteps echoed in the distance, then voices. "He's here." Sam and Reynolds exchanged a glance. Langston knew. A gunshot rang out. They dove for cover as bullets tore through the space around them. Sam returned fire, dropping another mercenary with a single headshot. Reynolds cursed under his breath. "They're everywhere." "Then we kill them all," Sam growled. They moved as one, cutting through Langston's men with ruthless precision. Sam was a force of nature, his movements sharp and brutal, his aim unerring. Every shot counted, every kill efficient. Reynolds covered his flank, keeping them moving forward. Bodies fell. Blood splattered against the cold steel of the warehouse floor. Then silence. Sam reloaded, his ears tuned to the stillness. A slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Langston. He stood atop a steel platform, flanked by his last 2 guards. A smug grin stretched across his face. "You really are a nightmare," Langston mused. "I underestimated you. I won't make that mistake again." Sam aimed his gun. "You won't get the chance." Langston held up a hand. "Before you pull that trigger, you should know I have a contingency plan." A screen flickered to life behind him. Sarah and Emma, bound dagged terrified. Reynolds' blood turned to ice. Langston's grin widened. "Call off your attack, or they die." Reynolds clenched his fists. "You son of a..." Sam grabbed his arm, steadying him. His mind raced. Langston thought he had the upper hand. He thought he had them cornered. He was wrong. Sam spoke calmly. "You should have killed them already." Langston's smile faltered. "What?" "Because now, I don't need to hold back." The lights cut out. A flashbang detonated. Chaos erupted. Sam moved first, vaulting onto a shipping crate, closing the distance between him and Langston. The 2 guards fired blindly, but Sam was faster. His knife found the first man's ribs, twisting deep. The second guard turned too slow. Sam's gun barked once. The guard crumpled. Langston stumbled backward, scrambling for his pistol. He fired wildly, the muzzle flash lighting up the darkness. Sam kept coming. Langston tripped over a fallen crate, his hands shaking as he tried to reload. Sam reached him, kicking the gun away. Langston looked up, fear finally setting in. "You think this ends with me?" he spat. "You kill me, someone worse will take my place." Sam knelt, gripping Langston's throat. "I know." With one swift motion, he snapped Langston's neck. The crime lord's body slumped, lifeless. Reynolds rushed to the console, his fingers flying over the keys. The screen flickered. Sarah and Emma were safe. Sam had arranged for their extraction hours ago. Reynolds exhaled, relief washing over him. Sam stood, his expression unreadable. "It's done." Reynolds turned to him. "Is it?" Sam glanced down at Langston's corpse. "No, this was just the beginning." The air in the warehouse was thick with smoke and the lingering scent of gunpowder. Langston's lifeless body lay sprawled on the steel floor, his empire reduced to ashes. The final confrontation had ended, but Sam Grayson knew this wasn't over. It never was. Reynolds stared at Langston's corpse, chest rising and falling with the weight of what they had just done. His hands were still shaking, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He turned to Sam, searching for some sense of closure in the man's expression. "He's dead," Reynolds muttered. "It's over." Sam said nothing. He holstered his weapon, his mind already moving beyond the present. Langston had been a piece on the board, an important one, but not the last. Sam had seen men like him before. When one fell, another always rose to take their place. His phone buzzed. A single message. "Unknown number. You've started something you can't stop, Ghost." He was just the beginning. "See you soon." Sam stared at the text, jaw tightening. The name Ghost wasn't used lightly. It was what his enemies had whispered in the dark, what they had called him before they died. Whoever sent this message knew exactly who he was. Reynolds saw the change in his expression. "What?" Sam turned the screen toward him. Reynolds read the message and felt the icy dread creep up his spine. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means someone else was watching," Sam murmured. "Someone bigger. Someone worse." A sharp breath. The reality of the situation settled like a weight on Reynolds' shoulders. "And they're coming for us." Sam didn't answer. He was already moving. Outside, the city was eerily quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick with water that reflected the neon lights above. A black SUV idled at the curb, waiting. Sam and Reynolds stepped into the vehicle without a word. The driver, a man in his late 50s with sharp eyes and a soldier's demeanor, nodded in acknowledgement. "Colonel Briggs," Reynolds greeted, still adjusting to the idea that they were now part of something much larger than a corrupt police department or a single crime lord's downfall. "Reynolds," Briggs acknowledged before turning his gaze to Sam. "We need to move. Now." Reynolds frowned. "Where?" Briggs tapped on a tablet screen, showing surveillance footage. Not of the warehouse, but of a high-security compound deep in the mountains of Eastern Europe. The timestamp was from minutes ago. The footage zoomed in on a familiar face. Reynolds stiffened. "No way." The image was grainy but unmistakable. A man with sharp, calculating eyes. One who had been presumed dead for years. Langston's operation had been vast. But it was clear now that he had been a lieutenant in something much larger. Briggs locked eyes with Sam. "Meet Victor Wolf." A chill ran through the car. Wolf. Sam had heard that name before. A ghost from his past. A name that had surfaced in classified reports but never confirmed. He had worked with Wolf once before the man had gone rogue. Before he had built something bigger than Langston ever could. "This isn't just a criminal empire," Briggs continued. "It's a network. One that doesn't just deal in trafficking or drugs. Wolfie is on another level. Government contracts. Covert assassinations. Arms dealing to rogue states. He doesn't just operate in the shadows, he controls them." Reynolds exhaled. "And now we're in his sights." Sam leaned forward, studying the image on the screen. Wolf's cold gaze was locked onto the camera, as if he knew someone was watching. "He's already moving," Briggs said. "Langston's death was expected. We intercepted chatter. Wolf anticipated this. He's shifting his operations, consolidating power." Sam's grip tightened on his knee. "Where's he now?" Briggs hesitated. "We don't know, but we do know this: he's not running. He's preparing." Sam let out a slow breath. His body ached, his wounds still fresh from the battle, But none of it mattered. Not anymore. We end this before it begins, he said. Reynolds blinked. What? We don't wait for him to come to us, Sam said firmly. We go after him first. Briggs studied him for a long moment. Then, he nodded. Good, the colonel said. Because I already have a target. He handed Sam a file. Inside were satellite images of a heavily guarded estate, along with a list of known Wolf operatives. Sam flipped through the pages, absorbing every detail. His heartbeat steadied. This was what he did. This was who he was. Reynolds rubbed his temples. Jesus. We just finished one war and you're already planning the next? Sam shut the file. It was never just one war. The SUV pulled onto the highway, merging into the night. Somewhere in the world, Wolf was waiting. But so was Sam. And this time, he wasn't just going to take down a crime syndicate. He was going to burn the whole damn network to the ground. Fade to black. To be continued. In life, battles are rarely fought in the open. The most important struggles often happen in the shadows where truth is hidden, corruption thrives, and justice must be fought for, not given. Sam Grayson's journey is a stark reminder that evil doesn't die with one victory. It adapts. It waits. And for those willing to stand against it, the fight is never truly over. For many, this story isn't just about action or revenge, it's about resilience. About knowing that when faced with impossible odds, the choice to stand up, to keep fighting, is what truly defines a person. Like Sam, we all reach moments where we must decide. Do we look away? Or do we take a stand? For older generations, this lesson runs deep. You have seen wars, social changes, and the rise and fall of leaders. You know that real strength isn't just about power, it's about integrity, wisdom, and the courage to protect what matters. No matter our age, we all have a role in standing for what is right. Because as long as injustice exists, the battle isn't over. And neither is our duty to fight for a better world. Sam Grayson's fight may have ended here, but the shadows always hold new dangers. His story is one of redemption, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of justice. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to explore more gripping tales of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable human spirit.